Most everyone knows the story of Jonah and the whale. It's even depicted in Disney movies and TV shows. But did you know this famous children's Bible story isn't anything like what we've been told? Like how Jonah wasn't even swallowed by a whale, but something much creepier. Or that Jonah is really the bad guy of the story. Or several other shocking things I discovered while reading this book again as an adult. I've decided that today I'm going to be reading over the book of Jonah. It's a pretty short book, so I should finish it within the day. Yesterday, I did a lot of, research on it. I learned a lot about it, so I feel like today I'm ready to actually read the story and understand it for what it is. Yesterday, I did a lot of, research on it. Would you be surprised if I said that I've never completed a puzzle on my own before? I've never been a big puzzler, and I always thought that my attention span wouldn't last long enough to finish one on my own. And how sad would it be to have a half-finished puzzle just lying around until it gets broken up and put back in the box? But recently I did a couple with other people and it was really fun, so I wanted to try one myself. It all started yesterday when I found this series of podcasts about Jonah. They're really long, and I decided I wanted to listen to all of them in one day. So I decided the most entertaining thing I could do while listening to them was build a puzzle. Let's hope that I can actually finish this one. I have basically just finished the first chapter of Jonah, and I feel like the very beginning of the story is something that you don't hear about a lot. So Jonah's a prophet, which basically means that God speaks directly to him, and his job is to take that message and to share it to other people. He tells him to go to the city of Nineveh and tell them, because they've been so bad and so evil, that they're about to essentially get what's coming to them. They're about to have to suffer all of the judgment for that. Right after Jonah hears this, instead of going to Nineveh and doing what he's supposed to do, he turns around, goes the opposite direction, gets on a ship, and sails as far away from Nineveh as he can. He's basically trying to flee this calling. I always thought that Jonah was the hero of this story, the innocent one that gets accidentally swallowed by a big fish, but it turns out he really is just running from his calling and doing the opposite of what God is asking him to do. So he's kind of setting himself up for failure, I guess. So I always thought that Jonah fell off the boat and that's how he got into the water in order to get swallowed by the fish. But I just got to the part where he goes into the ocean. There's actually a really big storm that was happening over the boat, and everyone on the ship thought that it was the wrath of a god, and they figured out it was because of Jonah. So it really was kind of like God coming after Jonah and stopping him from running away. Then they just agree to toss him into the ocean. So I'm getting to the good part. The big stuff is about to happen, the part that everyone knows, but I'm excited to actually read it for what the Bible says it is, if that makes sense. So I feel like I need to cut in really quick and explain a little bit more about the city of Nineveh, because the context about this city has so much to do with this story. So basically, Nineveh was the capital city of the Assyrian Empire and one of the most important cities in the world during that time. They were also very prideful people, and they were well known for their torture methods. The podcasts that I had been listening to actually described prophesying to the city of Nineveh as walking into Nazi Germany, telling them all how horrible they've been and telling them that they need to repent to a God that they don't even believe in. I feel like once you hear that, you can really start to understand why Jonah is running away. Once I got about halfway through the puzzle, I got to a part in the podcast that literally made me stop everything. What they were saying was so shocking to me. They finally started describing this fish and what it actually looked like. So I immediately had to pause and go look up some pictures. I just got to the part. I've actually read over it a couple times now because it's actually really super interesting. So obviously the storm doesn't stop, so Jonah gets thrown off the boat and into the water, and then he sinks down to the bottom of the ocean, and then once he gets to the bottom, he gets swallowed by this big fish. So usually when you see stuff about Jonah, the fish is always depicted as a whale, and I don't know if that's necessarily untrue, but when you look into it more, the original translation actually just translates to sea monster, or what's referred to in other places of the Bible as the Leviathan. The Leviathan is a sea serpent that seems evil, but actually always is listening to God and like doing something according to God's plan. I've been sitting on my couch for the past like 10 minutes just looking up pictures of this Leviathan. It's so creepy and it's so weird, but the coolest part about it is that it shows up in so many different books of the Bible, and it always seems like something evil or something negative, and it is kind of a dangerous thing, but it's always being used by God to like teach a lesson. So now that I've read the part about getting swallowed by the fish, he's on his way back to Nineveh. He's gonna do what God asked him to in the first place. Now I'm really confused as to what's next. Because there's like a decent amount of book left, but I feel like the lesson that you're supposed to learn has already been taught. Like, we know now you shouldn't run away from God's calling. What else could be a part of Jonah and the whale other than Jonah and the whale, you know? Is there more to learn from this story that I just never knew about? So I just finished Jonah, and it was actually a lot different than I expected. Basically, Jonah learns his lesson in the fish. He gets spit back out again. He goes to Nineveh, where he was supposed to go in the first place, and he prophesies and does exactly what he was supposed to do. But then something crazy happens. Nineveh actually listens to Jonah, and because they listen to him, they actually repent. And because they repent, God decides to have mercy on them and forgive them and decides not to destroy them, which sounds amazing, except Jonah isn't too happy about it. I think he's kind of upset for two reasons. Number one, because what he said didn't actually come true, and maybe that's a little bit embarrassing for him. But I also think he's upset with God's mercy towards Nineveh because they really didn't deserve it. I mean, they were really bad people, and to think about their sins just being wiped away because they asked for forgiveness just doesn't really seem fair. It's the kind of thing that you see over and over and over in the Bible. Whether the sin is ginormous or tiny, they get forgiven all the time. And it really doesn't matter the size. It's not like more difficult to forgive a bigger sin than a smaller sin. A sin is a sin. But then you have to think back to Jonah being literally swallowed whole by a fish and then being spit back out again once he repented. So I think Jonah slowly kind of has the realization that if the people of Nineveh don't deserve forgiveness, then neither does anyone. At the very end of the story, God gives Jonah a little analogy about mercy and how he should feel sorry for Nineveh instead of being angry at them. It also shows how his work of prophesying wasn't pointless, even though what he said didn't necessarily come true. I finally finished the puzzle on my own, and it was really satisfying. And even though I'm just gonna have to break it up and put it back in the box afterwards, just like I would have if I didn't finish the whole thing, I still think completing what I wanted to do in the first place was worth it, even if the outcome isn't quite as fun as the process.